that anymore.
Correct. So
the testimonial.
The testimonial. Oh, this is unscripted. Well, why don't you come in? Why not? Sure.
Hi, I'm Lou from Zucardis.com and with Charles Kirmuss today. Thank you, Charles, for joining us.
Greetings. Good morning. Good day.
At Axpona 2025.
Yahoo!
At having a great show so far. So we're a dealer for the Kirmuss system, and really happy to talk to you today. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'd love to share some information with you guys and let you get the full benefits out of record restoration.
Yeah. So I thought it would be fun to talk about kind of the journey that I went through, which I think is similar to what a lot of people have gone through in terms of their quest to clean records, right? So we all grew up in the old days where probably everybody had a disc washer, right?
Yep.
And you would put this fluid on it, rub it on the record, and then kind of sort of dry it off, right? So tell us about why that's left issues for us to deal with today.
Well, actually, you know, one of the things I recommend when people cannot afford a restoration machine, I do recommend using the disc washer, but no cleaning solution.
Right.
Just distilled water. That's, again, for people that you've just bought a used record, you have contaminants that are on the top of the record. Put it into that disc washer, the nice little yellow thing, spin it a couple of times, use the distilled water, take the record out, use an optician's cloth to remove the water, and also use our 10 micron brush to get into the groove. And then you're fine. Every 3 records, change out the water. I like it because we're doing mechanical work.
Exactly.
Their chemical is not to be used because of the fact that it's very aggressive. And the manufacturer will not actually tell you what is in the material. So that's a great way. Now, if you're, so I call it a quick wet clean. So that's nice. That's great. Going from there, don't use any of these brushes with sprays and liquids and so on, because they, number one, coat the record. But secondly, even if we talked about the disc washer with the water cannot get into the groove. All you're doing is a surface cleaning, because the water droplets are much larger than the width of the groove.
Exactly.
So here I have a picture here where this is what a groove looks like. So we have a 6 micron bottom, a 35, 45, 50 micron top. It changes with the size of the music, the same thing in the middle. And if you try to go and clean a record with water or a solution, the droplet is 4 or 5 times. It's 100 to 110 microns across. So all you're doing is a little surface cleaning.
So, which is better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
But it's not the best, right? And you also don't want to add new elements, chemicals that aren't coming off. So if you're going to not use one of these sort of systems, at least just use distilled, do a surface cleaning. You'll still get some benefits. It's better than grinding more dirt into the records that you're
And don't use any of the other processes out there. And we can certainly explain why.
Exactly. Now, I've tried other things too. What I've gone through, I've done the screw clamps together, try to rinse them off, but then you're constantly squirting with clean water and your hand gets numb from doing that. I've tried the cheaper ultrasonics, the ones that you used to see for, like on eBay or wherever, for 100 and something. That was a huge hassle for me as well, for trying to figure out how to get the record to spin in there. It was, it broke. It didn't do that great of a job, right? So I went through all those same frustrations that probably a lot of our customers went through. And then, we had some long conversations here, and we picked up the machines and started using them here. So you talked a little bit about how these are different from a typical ultrasonic that just does a cleaning, this does a restoration. Can you go into a little bit more on how that process works?
Well, I think even before just jumping into that and just thinking out loud, I think we have to understand first the record, okay? And what the record offers us, and then take a look at all of these other technologies that are out there, and then together we can make a decision.
Right.
So one of the things that all of the records have is an electrical charge. Records have a negative charge. And cleaning solutions, distilled water, soaps, they also have a negative charge. So they repel.
Exactly.
You also have the fact where these water droplets are larger than the groove. So no matter what system, we have a common problem. We got the record that's pushing away the cleaning solution, and we have the record that will not allow anything into the groove because the groove is smaller than the medium that we're using.
Exactly.
So if we take a look at ultrasonics that are out there that you mentioned, you know, some of them are these stainless steel tubs, others are do-it-yourself skewers where you put multiple records in and so on. Even if we take a look at a good cavitating system,
Right.
and I talk about ultrasonics as sonic bubblers versus real cavitation machines.
Exactly.
A good cavitation machine will not do anything either, including this one, unless we change the charge of the record to be opposite to that of the water.
Right.
So the basis is, first, you need a cavitating machine, and the machines that are in the marketplace, they're not cavitating.
Right.
How do we know? We've used the aluminum foil test where we put aluminum foils in the machine, and if they come out like this, they're not cavitating.
Right. I just explained for the viewers. So that shows you'll get little holes in the foil where the cavitation occurs, right?
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, what will happen is you should see something like this,
Right.
where how ultrasonics work, if they are real cavitating machines, is they have a tank like this, stainless steel tank. We have what we call transducers underneath in the tub. Consider them speakers. And then we have a generator that will generate sound, 25 kilohertz, 35 kilohertz, 45 kilohertz, different frequencies. And the different frequencies make for the different size bubble. So when we do have cavitation, bubbles rise, they implode, and they then basically act like vacuums.
Right.
So if we take a look at this, we do not see hits on the aluminum foil.
Right.
Rather, we see mountains.
Exactly.
So when the bubbles are imploding, they create a vacuum and they suck materials out.
Right.
So this is the true test, unless you use a tester that we have on the wall here that we use for Mr. Fremmer to show 810s of pressure being generated by a true ultrasonic between all records from top to bottom. So that's where we need to look for cavitation.
Right.
So if you're looking for a machine, you need to ask what is the watts per square centimeter, not watts, or cavins of pressure. And no one can answer that.
Exactly. So, and this is why I love working with Charles, because he does all the research to understand the process at a really in-depth level, right? And so you've also done testing where you've been able to tell before restoration and after restoration that the decibel level increase, right?
Yes, that's correct. What we've done is two types of tests to prove what we've been purporting, that there is a pressing oil. So, you know, I want to kind of put a hold and get back to what the record is.
Right.
The record comes out of a pressing machine where we have a stamper with a label that falls on one side of the stamper. So let's consider this side A. We then have a hot piece of plastic that drops onto the label. And then we have label side B come on top.
Right.
Then we have side B, stamper, comes down, and 3 or 4 minutes later, a record pops out.
Exactly.
The record pops out because there's a release agent, a pressing oil that surfaces.
Right.
Otherwise,
and that's in the vinyl itself.
that's
right?
in the biscuit. Yep, that's in the biscuit. If we did not have that, this is what your record would look like. It's stuck in the machine. Okay, you have to pry it out. And we had to use microscopes and whatever to prove to people like Mr. Fremmer that you do not spray PAM onto a stamper to get the record out. It actually comes out here, and that there is a pressing oil. And this is the root of why, instead of just using the little spin clean that we talked about, we're interested in having the needle, your needle, play the stamper, not the record's oil and other contaminants. So while we said, yep, nice surface clean is great, we're not going to get the music that you just talked about where we do before and after testing.
Correct.
So here I have a little test here. There we go. So to prove what we do is if you come over to the store, you come over here, bring us a record, we play the record, and then we look at the before result with a spectrum analyzer. Here you see a signal output of the cartridge. We see the frequency response of the record.
Correct.
And then after, we then can see the output of the cartridge has increased, the frequency of the cartridge has increased, and this stuck piece of dust that landed on a new record at the factory in the cooling oil that creates that nasty pop every time that we have the record played at that spot. Removing the oil, we now remove the pop and we get the increased signal because we can see here detail that was hidden by the oil.
Right, and that's a good point. It's not just for used records that you're trying to restore.
New
records
records.
right out. I mean, they're not made in a clean room, so they will have contaminants in terms of dust, and then also the oils.
Correct. So
the testimonial.
The testimonial. Oh, this is unscripted. Well, why don't you come in? Why not? Sure. The camera's there. No, come on in. Come on in. There we go, Brian. Who are you, Brian? Why not?
Brian Lowe, I'm with Phyllis. I've been a vinyl aficionado for many years. And at the last show, we had our 1984 copy of Half Speed Master Dark Side of the Moon cleaned by Kirmuss and restored. It was unbelievable. On the lead-in track with the heartbeat, that was all we heard was the heartbeat. Everything else was clean, quiet, and gone. That was the first time ever since 1984 that I heard it sound that good.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, and the reason for that is we're playing the stamper.
Exactly.
We're playing the stamper. So, in essence, what we need to do in order to achieve that is we need cavitation, which this is a cavitating machine, but we need to change the charge of the record to be opposite to that of the water. So that's the reason why we need to go in and out with our machine, taking the record, there we go, applying a spray to it on the workstation, putting it in the machine for either 2 to 5 minutes or 2 or 5 minutes, taking it out, reapplying the spray, putting it back in, another 2 or 5 minutes, taking it out, back and forth 2 or 3 times in order to do one thing. We removed 3 coatings. We talked about not using these sprays with a brush. All the systems, vacuum systems, what they do is you pour a liquid onto the record, you swish the liquid around. We know by just before where the water cannot get into the groove because the water droplet is larger than the groove. The vacuum then removes the water and applies a film. And if you do it more, you now increase the film. So a shiny record coming out of a vacuum system isn't going to do anything. It may hide the pop because the needle is now riding higher in the groove, but eventually your needle is the cleaning agent and it will eat away that shine and you're back to the pop. So by changing the charge of the record, we're now bringing those bubbles up. They're collapsing. They're being attracted to the record. And in the first cycle, we will remove the film from mechanical brushing with a cleaning solution, air drying from fake ultrasonic systems, vacuum drying from vacuum systems. We will remove that film. And the reason, unfortunately, we have to go in and out is because as this record turns, we now lose the charge. So we go from positive back to negative, apply positive, and then now we will apply or remove in the second cycle the scratches on the record.
Right.
Why do I like old records? Why do I go and buy old records at Goodwill stores? They're 50 cents on Tuesdays. They also, in effect, are the original records, original artists, original labels. And even if they look like shit, 7 times out of 10, the scratches are on the film. The scratches are on the film of the plasticizer. So what is that? When a record's being made, or whether it's being made a year ago, 10 years ago, 10 minutes ago, 100 years later, there's a gas that comes out of the record that then creates a film on the record. Right. Think of your new car smell. Great smell, new car, but there's a film on the windshield. Right. So that's where the scratches are on those records that are vintage. So we'll remove that in the second cycle.
Right.
So then finally, the third and fourth cycles in and out, we will remove the pressing oil that has the captured dust particles that have been fused in the record.
Right.
And then the record comes out virtually dry.
Yep.
Why? Because the record is negative and water is negative.
Exactly.
So they repel.
And so what you're saying, so a lot of these things that you're saying, I've had customers come up to me at records. So we do record shows a lot, talk to different customers, some who have the machine as well, and give similar testimonials to the guy that just came up, right? And they're very excited about it. And they say, you know, you have one customer asking a question, oh, does that take a lot of time? And it doesn't really take a lot of time. You go through a couple of quick cycles. Even at a minimum, you could just throw it in for a surface clean. So let's say you get a cheap record. You're not sure if it's damaged or not. Sometimes they look horrible, and you clean it, and it's great. So all right, we'll restore it, and we'll keep it. Some maybe aren't. They're damaged. You're not going to go through the trouble. But you can test that in basically a couple of minutes by putting it in the machine. It's
a 2-minute cycle in the machine. It will come out wet because we have not removed all the contaminants. Correct. So you will have to use the buddy cloth and then the microfiber cloth, and then you'll still use a 10-micron fiber to polish the groove. You haven't done anything inside, but at least you've surface cleaned it.
And I use, my second turn. I'm going to use my good turntable for those.
Yep.
My test the record turntable, right? But you can at least get a sense if it's got promise or if it doesn't have promise.
Right.
You can decide if you restore it or not, right? And then the other part about the drying and all, and I had a customer say the same thing. You pull it out, and it's almost dry as soon as you pull it out. It takes very little after that to finish it off and put it back in the sleeve. And then the third thing is you are putting multiple records in the same water, but at the end of the cycle, you take this off. When you're done cleaning your records, you will see all this dark gunk basically at the bottom, and
all the fungus and whatever falls and it gets stuck on the bottom of the tank.
So it's not really resurfacing on your records, but it's amazing when you're done with the session how much of that gunk you can have at the bottom of the machine.
Yeah, there are a couple of machines that are out there that purport that there's a filter and they filter water and they'll remove that. So if someone says, well, we're not using a filter, we don't need a filter because of what you said, Lou, where we now have everything stuck on the bottom of the tank. But more importantly, a record, when it's restored, repels water. Right. So it comes out dry. So who cares if we have a couple of droplets of water to remove with the optician's cloth?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Exactly.
It doesn't matter. And again, going back to the time, you only have to do this once in the lifetime of the record.
Right.
So in 18 minutes to 20 or 25 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on the provenance and the record, you now are with the artist in the studio the way it was recorded. Exactly. You're playing the stamper. And that will give you a gain on new records of 1.4 dB gain with RTI's records, and Bisson's records here next door are pressed by RTI. They use the best plastics. Right. So we give 1.4, 1.5 dB gain out of your cartridge, and we give you 8% more frequency response, tone, resonance, timbre, and harmonics, which are hidden. Right. And the reason why there is that small change, because all records need to have a release agent. They need to have that pressing oil that surfaces, otherwise the record won't come out. Other records that are manufactured by other companies have 20 dB gain out of your cartridge. That's 5 times double over a gain, and 30 to 40% increase in frequency response. It's amazing. You've opened up, and the newer records are the worst,
right?
Because they don't use the old plastics that we used to,
right? So very interesting. Okay. So the other point, just to make before I know we're probably running out of time here, but we sell at record stores, at record shows, right? And I encourage users to go out and go to these record shows. You can sometimes get some real bargains out there. But if you're a seller at these shows, we bring a machine. We offer service at the show where we clean your restore your vinyl for you, right? We have great conversations with customers. They're always asking questions. We get testimonials, like we said. And a lot of the vinyl that we sell used, we will go through the restoration process and label it as such. And it does command a higher price. So there's, if you're in the business, it really is an investment that can pay itself off over time if you properly model it. So we put stickers on that say, restored using the Kirmuss system or something like that. And the customers appreciate that we've gone through that trouble.
Yeah, you'll see that on Discogs where Kirmuss restored records, if advertised, first of all, get 200, 2,000, 20,000 times more the value. We also, we're now pushing the industry to change the way we grade records. Normally you have a VG minus or a G plus, and if you take a look at the scale, it talks about both the look of the record and the sound of the record, okay? And that is kind of now misleading, because what I can do, for those of you that know the scale, I can have a record that is P minus or P plus with a sound that is VG plus, VG minus. So we're trying to push the industry and the people that are restoring records to have the two letters. One for the look, and then the second for the sound.
Exactly.
And because
we're not talking about the cover, we're talking about the record.
We're talking about the record itself. And we're now also pushing the envelope where I only buy records, new records from new artists. I don't buy remakes. I don't buy digitally remastered. I like the way that records are now manufactured in the sense of the studio. If I want to have a Dave Brubeck, take 5, I will go to the most expensive neighborhood in Denver. I will go to the closest Goodwill store, 50 cents on Tuesdays because I'm over 65, and I will get the original pressing, or first or second original, the real artwork, the real music, and even if the record looks scratched, remember what I said, 7 times out of 10, the scratches are not in the plastic. They're in the outgassing, that plasticizer film. And we've all had that typical tone arm scratch where every revolution you hear the tick, because we have scratched the plastic. 7 times out of 10, because now we've removed all those layers, whatever someone air or vacuum dried on the record, the outgassing of the plasticizer, the release agent, the pressing oil, we will not hear that tick. We will see it, the scratch, but the needle is now in the pocket.
And I've had that experience too. Sometimes you look at a record and you're like, I don't know, this is questionable. I'll try it. And it ends up being great sounding record. You don't hear any of that.
In this building, we have 2 or 3 used record resellers that are using this to restore the records that are worth something. Here in 2017, we had 2 university students that were basically had their dad buy this machine, and they paid their way through university by using our machine to flip records.
That's awesome.
And they graduated. And thanks to the work that they did with this. But there are a couple of caveats. If you're going to go buy used records and there's a record reseller, please ask them what they use to shine the record.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
I know what you're going to say next, but go ahead.
We have record resellers using shoe polish, lighter fluid to make the record so shiny that you think it just came out of the pressing plant. There is no such thing as an NOS record that there's a big container of 50,000 records that arrived from God, and these records have never been opened, and they look immaculate. If someone says I use distilled water and a cloth, perfect. I will buy from them. If they say, oh, I use a X brand vacuum machine, or I use a Y brand ultrasonic, whether it's a vacuum machine or whether it's an ultrasonic, whether they work or not, I don't care. I ask them, what chemical did you use? If you use the chemicals that come with those machines, go away. Most of the chemicals are aggressive to plasticizers and plastic. That's why I go to garage sales. I go to the Goodwill. My parents never used any chemicals on their records. So you need to be careful. And we are seeing repacks. With the Kirmuss system, we will remove those coatings, and we've seen many major brand records that are sold as new that are actually repacks somewhere in the system. Whether it's the record reseller that has packaged and cleaned and packaged, not restored, cleaned and packaged, or the distributor, we don't know. I haven't gone that far to find out who is the guilty party. But it's embarrassing when you just buy a 180-gram audiophile record that for $150, and even before we restore it, now we check. We always look at the record before even using our machine. If we see some scratches on there and fingerprints, we tell the fellow, I'm sorry, we can restore it, but you've been cheated. So and we had the largest record show in North America in Montreal from Vinyl Me Please, VMP, last weekend. We have, instead of 5,000 people here, we have 15,000 people. And they come in with strollers. They buy records, but they don't play them.
They don't play.
So they look for a shiny record and said, this is beautiful. They don't even have a turntable. So there's two different markets here. So I'm always buyer beware, that we will restore the record. We're the only people that are able to do it. And yes, it's a little elbow grease, but whether you have a $400 or $500 Rega, nice, even with powered full cal speakers, nice student entry-level system, or just with headphones, or you have $100,000, $500,000, $1 million investment, if you have a turntable and you have not restored the record, you're not benefiting from analog.
All right. Well, I think everybody's starting to filter in now to starting the day here, so probably a good time to wrap up. But again, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining to our listeners
Very good.
all the benefits. And if you haven't checked these out yet, please do. I think you'll be very happy.
So I always say, because I'm not trying to sell something, I'm a music lover just like all of you are. Minimum, use a 10 micron brush before you play your record. Why? You have not removed yet the pressing oil. You have not removed the release agent. Your needle heats up that coating, and just like at the record plant, you now have, if you haven't used this, dirt, dust, dandruff can land possibly onto the groove, and you fuse in new pops. So you use this to remove the dust. You'll then use a lint remover to just clean that, and then you'll use the carbon fiber end to reduce the static. And don't buy just this. These carbon fibers are not made to clean records. A lot of people are selling them as such. They just switch the dust around. They're to reduce static. Exactly. So that is the minimum. If you have a nasty record, a little, even a mister, distilled water, mist, bunny cloth, optician's cloth, and use the same 10 micron to polish the groove. And then, if you want to get the fun and the enjoyment out of your stereo and the emotion of the artist, it's our restoration system.
So, sounds great. So we have these. We do have all the accessories as well at Zicardi's.com. So come visit us, and we give you a nice coupon for your next vinyl purchase after making a purchase of one of these machines. So we hope you enjoy.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Enjoy and keep spinning those records.
Yep. Take care.